Women in Muslim nations are less likely than those in other parts of the world to be healthy, educated, hold top jobs or be in politics. That's according to a World Economic Forum report which says those countries are falling behind the rest of the world when it comes to gender parity. Women fare the best in Sweden. It comes at the top of the 120 countries that are surveyed. Other Nordic countries, Norway, Finland and Iceland, follow in second, third and fourth place. Now, in case you're wondering, the United States comes in at number 31, mainly because the number of female lawmakers and senior officials fell in 2007, and the pay gap between men and women widened. Nearly all countries in the Middle East came in the bottom third. Pakistan, Chad and Yemen were at the bottom of the list. Well, joining me now from New York is Professor Laura Tyson. She's the head of the World Economic Forum's Women Leaders Program, which published the report, and of course a former senior economic advisor to President Bill Clinton. Let me put this to you, Laura, that this report reveals we still have a shockingly long way to go to close that gender gap, don't we?
Well, you know, this is a glass half full, half empty, and it depends. There's a lot of variation across countries. If you look at the overall numbers, which we try to bring all the country evidence together, 128 countries, 92% of the world's population, you'd say we're doing quite well on the area of health parity and educational parity, doing much less well on economic parity, and doing dreadfully on political. So that we have a long way to go in economics and politics. Really, for me, a very important part of this news is that in terms of education, on whether you take literacy, primary, secondary, tertiary education, a number of countries around the world, regardless of difference in development level, doing very well at bringing women to have equal opportunity with men.
Well, one of the things that actually is very interesting is that if you look at the top 20, you've actually got three developing nations, the Philippines, Latvia, I suppose that's an emerging East European nation, but also Sri Lanka and South Africa. I mean, all power to their elbow. But it does show that it's not necessarily linked to economic development or competitiveness if they're in the top 20 and the US is at number 31.
Exactly. We tried very hard to put together the numbers in such a way that we were looking at not levels but gaps, so that it's quite possible to be a high-income country and not do that well. The United States would be one of those examples, mainly because of a significant gap in political parity. It's quite easy to be a high-income, we could also see high-income countries like Saudi Arabia who are doing very poorly, and then, as you said, developing countries like the Philippines who are doing very well. One of the nice things about this index is it's meant to be a framework that policymakers can look at their performance vis-a-vis other countries, and the way we've constructed it, it allows for countries to do quite well, even poor countries to do quite well, and they can compare themselves to countries at their own development level or at higher development levels.
Do you think actually anyone really pays much attention to this kind of report, apart from the likes of you and me wringing our hands here?
Well, you know, it was very interesting. Last year was the first year we introduced the report, and I was really struck by the extent to which policymakers around the world paid attention to it. And they paid attention to it, if no other reason, by looking at how their country was doing. And then a number of countries said, well, wait a minute, I don't think you're measuring this right, or why aren't we in this report? We should get some data together. So I actually think that countries are looking at this as a benchmark, just as they look at the global competitiveness indicator. The World Economic Forum puts out a number of major reports each year which are influential in policy circles around the world, and they're influential because we have a large range of countries, we do the data very carefully, and countries really can see how they're doing, and I think it will over time serve as a catalyst for change.
Laura Tyson, thank you very much indeed. Well, up next on